This should be interesting. He is recording, so. Oh, I was hoping for like a yell and a thud or something.
Pathetic, yeah.
What?
I was hoping for like a yell and a thud or something.
Oh. No, it was, I'm recording a podcast. Can you be quiet? Thanks. That's how that happened. I also
Not the ASMR version.
All right.
Okay, so we just got out of the Barbie movie. That was my second time seeing it. Your first time?
First time.
I'm curious to know like what your initial thoughts is. We're gonna do a full episode on this, but this is just like initial thoughts. We're literally sitting in my car at the movie theater.
I mean, it was I expected a lot of social commentary going into it, and there definitely was a lot of that, but not just like, you go into the Barbie movie, so you expect there to be social commentary on like gender roles and sexism and stuff, but there was more to it too. I feel like there was some talk about like just identity in general, like
and stolen land too. Quite literally, they bring up indigenous people.
Like, yeah, well,
in the movie.
That, and I was just talking about like one's like individuality too, like being your own person, not like defining your worth based on other people.
Yes, that was really cool.
Big theme too at the end.
Hashtag I am Kenough. They're selling that hoodie, by the way. I wanted to tell you that, but I didn't because I didn't want to give it away. I
liked Mattel's because they were. At the beginning, it said like a Mattel production.
Yeah.
I liked that they were able to laugh at themselves.
Yes.
About like the products that got canceled, or they were just like not like canceled as we know it, but like,
but literally canceled, like taken out of production.
Yeah,
yes.
I thought that was really funny.
That was funny. I looked like the freak, not looked like I was the freak that was taking notes in the theater.
Yes.
So,
bright notes. They
really?
Were like, it was the white background, but then it went
I turned the brightness
black.
down all the way, but yes. So I either looked like someone who was about to write a report on it, or a really angry man being like, she said this. It was the former. Kind of. We're doing a podcast, but do you have any final thoughts before?
I enjoyed it. I just thought it was a good movie. I'm sure as I process, there'll be more to say, and we're going to do an episode like you said, but
yes.
I did enjoy it. That was a good movie.
All right, we'll see you in like less than 2 seconds.
Each.
Do.
Yeah.
Hi, Ken.
Hi, Ken. You said that we were going to do that too right away, and I completely forgot. So we're talking about Mission Impossible, right? This episode.
Of course.
I don't even know what Mission Impossible movie it is, but I know there's a Mission Impossible movie out, but no one's talking about it because we're all talking about Barbie.
The one that doesn't include Scientology. Yeah. As far as we know.
Is Tom Cruise still in that?
Who knows?
Who knows?
I'm probably not going to see, or maybe I will. I don't know. Who knows? We're talking about, of course, Barbie.
We are.
The movie.
We're talking about Barbie. You've seen it how many times at this point?
Yeah, the intro is now incorrect. I've seen it 3 times. And I have a bone to pick with the audience that you and I saw it with. Because you were my second time seeing it. And the first time I saw it.
We also saw it on a Monday. And
it
was at 7:30. So that could make a difference too. But go ahead. Just giving context.
Of course.
Defending my audience.
Yes. Well, it had nothing to do with Justin. He was phenomenal.
I feel like I was the loudest reactor.
You probably were. And in my first showing, you would have been the quietest because people were like really, like they clapped before the show. They clapped before the movie, after the movie. Every single person was in pink. Except myself. I was dressed in a Ken-like fashion, but my shirt was orange. But yeah, like the second group was just the least lively. And we were at AMC. Like, heartbreak is supposed to feel good in a place like this, as you've heard from Nicole Kidman.
Our favorite Australian.
Yes.
No, Zach's our favorite Australian. She's our
Yes, he is.
Australian.
And he does not live in New Zealand. like I said to his face or through a screen. I was like, he's from New Zealand. And he was like, no, I'm not. And I was like, no, he's not. He's from Australia.
Anyway.
But yeah, so we are going to talk about the Barbie movie. How are you before we get into it, before we bring in our guest?
I'm doing well. I'm excited about this episode. You commented on my shirt again before we started recording, and I'm happy about that. Thank you. Makes me feel good. Just little things like that. Words of affirmation. Appreciate that. Yeah, but I'm excited for this episode. Let's bring in our guest. This Barbie graduated from St. Joseph's University. She's laughing hysterically at me right now. This past May, and is now pursuing a graduate degree from the same university. She's still living in Philadelphia this summer. She's a very cool person. Let's just bring her in. Her name, Sara Melley.
Hi, guys.
Hello, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this.
Can we just say you took time on very short notice to be here, and you're even here instead of hanging out with your friends right now, so we very much appreciate you. I myself took time away from beach, so but thank you for being here.
Any excuse to talk about Barbie, it's been my whole personality for the past week. So.
And we love that. Before we get into the Barbie conversation, though, we do ask each guest that we have on the show, if you were a fruit, what fruit would you be and why?
Ooh. That's a really good question. I'm literally I'm usually used to the potato question, like what type of potato are you?
What's the potato? Oh, you just said it. Okay.
What type of potato are you? But for fruit, I don't know why, but I don't know. I'd probably say strawberry, just like very generic. I really like a strawberry. I have no deep meaning for that, but they're my
Most
favorite.
people don't. It's fine.
Yeah, it's good.
That's all right.
I had strawberries today.
Yum.
Wonderful.
Take it away, Ken.
So, Sarah, welcome. Just before we get any further, too, didn't say, and people might know, I didn't say what degrees you earned because I didn't want to get it wrong. So what degree did you just graduate with undergrad, and now what degree are you pursuing at St. Joe's?
Well, they have nothing to do with
nothing to do with it, but you know, you need to show.
Yeah, I'm just
show your amazingness and your credibility. So.
Not qualified to give any intellectual
we aren't either.
opinion on this topic, but I graduated with bachelor's in political science and psychology, and now I'm pursuing my master's in public policy, and I'll graduate next year.
So extremely qualified to talk about Barbie.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm also a girl, so I'm definitely
more than these
qualified.
Kens. So I mean, yeah, that's also. I mean, speaking of that too, I felt like it. As any episode, but we'll be talking about different themes on, gender and gender equity and feminism and masculinity and things like that. So I think it's important for us to kind of lead this episode off with our pronouns and some of our identities. So I can go first with that. My name is Justin, pronouns he, him, his. I am a biracial, cisgender, straight male coming into this conversation about Barbie.
I am Nick Gervasi. I am another co-host on this show, and I identify as a cisgender gay male, which is different. I just want to point out gender is different from sex.
I am Sarah. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a white cisgendered lesbian.
Ooh, a friend. I didn't know this. I didn't know this. Friend.
Friend, I see you.
Boom, 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 boom. See, I have the worst gaydar possible, so like
I look like such a basic straight girl, so it's okay if you don't clock me. Most people don't.
No, I don't clock like anyone.
Barbie?
Definitely not stereotypical Barbie, but I can look like it if I want to.
Well, I can't clock anyone, so it took me a long time to clock myself, if I'm being quite honest with you. So like, and yeah, so, but yes, friend, so excited for you to be here.
Me too.
So before we go on, we should just say potential spoilers ahead for Barbie. So if you haven't seen the movie, you can still listen, just be aware, there might be spoilers, and we don't want to spoil this. But Sarah, you just kind of heard from the cold open that we had our initial, I guess it was more my initial reactions to the movie right when we left the theater. But what were your kind of initial reactions after seeing the movie? You saw it with one of your friends, right?
Yes. Well, I've seen it twice so far.
You've seen it twice too. Okay.
Yes.
Double friend.
Double friend.
Yeah. Well, so the first time I saw it with one of my best friends, we were in tears. I was a mess. So I was literally just like, it was pure joy, but also just like so many emotions. I could not collect myself. And then the second time I took the two little girls that I babysit to see it, which was fun. Obviously it's like the young, like they missed a lot of what the movie was there for, but it was so much fun to see it with young girls and see their reactions to that, especially like it's such a different movie than what I grew up with, or the Barbie that I grew up with. It was a very different type of Barbie, so that was really fun. I think I was just, my initial reaction, I was just like in awe of every aspect of the film, the acting, the writing, the directing, the production. It's been a lot of processing.
Yeah,
for sure.
Nick, we didn't really get to hear your initial reaction, but was yours similar to that and to mine? What was your, having seen it 3 times?
Yeah, well, when I first watched the movie, I was like, I have to come back. First of all, I have to process, and then I have to come back and watch it again, and I have to take notes this time. Also, I just want to say, not the medical emergency in the background. Did anyone hear that?
Sorry, I live in Philadelphia.
Okay, well, so, yeah, no, I definitely had to process. I loved it. I was dissecting it as I watched. I think the magic of the movie is how it makes girls and women feel. And, cinematically, I think the magic is in the details. Like, it's very, very detail-oriented. Like, even, like, I don't know if you saw this, but I saw an interview with Margot Robbie with, like, the stickers in the fridge. There are a few different examples of this, but, like, Barbie doesn't have real food, and that just works, because she's Barbie. It's a lot of make-believe and suspend... What's the right word? What am I looking for?
Reality?
Suspend reality, just in the way that, like, what does beach mean? We don't know. I do beach. When she just kind of, like, floats off her... Yeah, exactly. When she floats off the top of her roof, because Barbies don't use the stairs. Like, you just suspend reality to create this, like, plastic world. But that's the magic of it from, like, a cinema level. But I think... the real magic is how it makes girls and women feel. And I think Margot Robbie did a fantastic... I felt so bad for her in the crying scenes. Like, even when she finds out that she's not this... I'm going to take it way back after this, but after she finds out that she's not this symbol of empowerment to many young girls in the real world, that was like... her performance there was gut-wrenching, in my opinion. So... we can talk about that a little bit later too. But yeah, those are my 3 aspects: the acting, the details, and the message.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was just like, I felt so seen. I really did. And like, kind of how you were describing the experience in the theater was so special too, with all of these people, cheering and dressed up. And it's been so long since we've had that kind of like monoculture moment of like going to the movies and everyone's excited for one movie, and I feel like it's been so long since that kind of thing has happened, so it was just a really special experience.
Did you feel the energy at the end of the movie? Like, it was almost I'll let you explain it, but what was that like? I
think I was just like overcome when they start playing the Billie Eilish song and doing all those clips, and she's with Ruth, or Margot Robbie is with Ruth, the creator of Barbie. And that just like encapsulates like girlhood and growing up and motherhood and just like the lifelong experience that is very nuanced and varied, but also so singular of being a woman. That was just like when the tears started coming down my face, and everyone in the theater like could feel it, like could just feel it, how raw that the those emotions were for each of us, because I think a lot of us were also thinking about our own experiences, and how we were represented in a Barbie movie it was just insane.
It was quite intelligent.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
what
I
I think it was a very smart movie too. Like the way you mentioned
100%.
poking fun at Mattel, the layers of commentary where I feel like the kids that I brought, they laughed at a lot of the jokes, like they got it, but I got them in a different way. Um,
Right.
and that I felt like it was very accessible and palatable to people who don't have feminist discourse all the time or engage in these conversations all the time. They could receive this messaging, and enjoy a fun movie, whereas you could also like dive really deep into the layers of what they were talking about and the themes that the filmmakers were exploring.
Obviously, I will never know what it's like to be a mother or a woman, but the energy that I felt at the end of the movie could only be described in my words as a lightness and a heaviness at the same time. But everyone was very quiet in all three. Like, leaving the movie, it was almost as if we had just watched, like I felt like we were in a way processing out of, like, something very heavy, like a... And there were a lot of heavy themes in there. But there was also, I feel, a lot of optimism. Would you agree with that? I don't want to speak for you. That's why I
Yeah.
purposely wanted you to...
No, absolutely. I did feel that sense. When I say I felt seen, like that is a good thing, and like all of the heaviness and self-reflection that it made you do, it was all with this feeling of like, oh my, like I remember the first text I sent to my family group chat after seeing it was, I love being a woman. Like it was just like really that, like reclaiming that love of like being a girl, and everything that this movie represented and made you reflect upon was just, I don't even have words for it at this point. It is just really such a special feeling.
As Nick said, we're both self-identifying males and men, and so maybe we couldn't come at the movie at the same lens that you did. I do feel like, having women in our lives, we both have sisters, we both have mothers, Nick and I, and women friends. I think as a proclaimed feminist too, I like to think that I, stand up for, women's rights, and just any type of discrimination, really. I think, Nick, you hit it, the nail on the head when you said it was like a lightness and a heaviness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how much that really contributed to the conversation right there, but I just felt like too, despite not being, not identifying as a woman, I too kind of felt that, but maybe definitely from a different perspective.
I feel very passionately about this. Like, as you know, I've said this before on the show, this is no surprise. There are a lot of strong women in my life, and also my heroes. Like, yeah. I don't need to name them. I've named her a lot on this show. Ladies and gentlemen, her. Where was I going with this? Oh, you talk about that special feeling that you had, and while there were a ton of moments at the beginning of the movie that were probably felt, heavily, or I won't use the word heavily because we already said heavy, and I don't mean it in like a dark way, just like we're very relatable to women. I feel like the first turning point in the movie where you start to see, oh, this is going to get a little bit more, this is going to dive a little bit deeper, is at the bus stop when the old woman and Barbie are both sitting on the bench. Do you want to talk about that scene first, do we think? That was when it really, for me, when I was like, I mean, I kind of knew going in that it was going to go deeper than just being a movie about a plastic doll. But that scene has been talked about a lot on social media, so I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, I really thought that scene was so beautiful, because I think Barbie, you see this multiple times throughout the movie of how Barbie responds to situations or reacts that shows that she hasn't internalized all of these messages that patriarchy teaches us as women growing up. You see that in her interactions with Ken, in the way that she has no problem with refusing his advances or saying no, because she was never taught that she should be afraid of what saying no to a man might mean. And I think you see that again in this bus stop scene, where she was never taught that aging is a negative thing for a woman, or that beauty is only in the stereotypical Barbie beauty that we're often sold. She sees this woman, this older woman, sitting at a bus stop, says that you're beautiful. And what's even better is that this older woman embraces that compliment, does not even say thank you, doesn't try to qualify that statement, or say, oh well, I for my age, sure. No, all she says is, I know it. She knows she's beautiful, and so does Barbie. And I think that's just a really powerful, like, kind of a scene that pulls it all together of what Barbie land is without patriarchy, even though this scene is taking place in the real world, because that is how the Barbies exist in Barbie land. They are aware of their power and don't feel bad about having power and having beauty, and don't apologize for their accomplishments. And Barbie's able to articulate that to this woman, and she can as well.
I really liked that scene too, and I think Sarah said it most eloquently, so I'm not even going to try and follow that. But something that brought to mind, just that's one of the first scenes you see, or maybe one of the second, but scenes you see when Barbie and Ken make it to the real world. And what I was just thinking about, Nick, you kind of talked about like cinematically how it was written and different things like that. But I think what Greta Gerwig did really well in writing the movie was, you don't see anything about the real world until she wants you to, right? So it's your first lens into the movie is Barbie Land, or Barbie World, Barbie Land. Yeah, is Barbie Land, and you get to know how that world is run and things like that. And I think for me, from my lens, which I find interesting now talking about it, and I'm just kind of realizing it as I'm processing it out loud, when we made the transition from Barbie Land into the real world, we are all part of that world. That's not the fantasy part. Barbie Land is part of the fantasy part, but it made our world and the things that happen in our world that much more jarring coming from the fantasy land of Barbie Land.
True.
Just from my lens, the contrast. And obviously that was on purpose, but just the immediate catcalling, the immediate comments on Barbie's body and Ken's outfit, and both of their outfits. And a privilege of mine being a man is that I don't experience the catcalling. I don't experience, that type of physical scrutiny. I guess maybe I do to an extent, but I guess not to the amount that maybe women do in our society. And so I thought cinematically that was an interesting thing that Greta Gerwig did, and very purposely so, because just as I'm now talking about it, it was just jarring to just see things that happen in our everyday life that I might just be a blind follower in, or what's the word that I'm thinking of? Not a follower, because I'd like to think I don't. I'm pretty sure I don't catcall. Haven't catcalled.
No,
I can say
don't.
Definitively.
I was going to say, what are you making yourself out to be?
No, yeah, right. Both of you know who I am. I have not done that. But what's a complicit? I feel like a complicity. Yeah, it's a complicity that I'm in, just being around that, and just in the society that we are in, that it was thrown into your face. I think having that, you start with that and then go into the real world.
Justin, you mentioned the catcalling and the comments about Barbie's body in the movie. I don't know if you heard this, because it's said very quickly, and there's music playing in the background, but Greta also took aim at the way women dress being the reason that it's not the reason, but there's a misogynistic argument that oh, well, she was wearing this, that's why this happened, or her outfit was too revealing. The cop that's arresting them says the second time they're arrested, when they're fully clothed, both her and Ken, or rather their skin isn't showing, a lot of their skin on their body is not showing, and they make a comment about that too, saying, well, it's better this way, you can leave more to the imagination. So that was highlighting that it's not, which we know, but it's not the way they dress, it's the way that you're viewing them.
It's the perception. No matter what you're wearing, you're going to get a comment.
Right. That's what that scene to me was meant to do.
Right. And for context, when they're first arrested, they're wearing like 80s workout clothes.
Yes.
Workout video clothes.
Yes.
Very leotard, unitard, just tight
yes.
clothing. This is Ken and Barbie. And then the second time they're arrested, is that when they're in
the
cowboy outfits with frills and things like that?
Yes. Sarah, I just want to give you, did you hear that comment in the movie?
For the second time that they got arrested?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. When he's like, the officer says something to the effect of like, oh, it's even better when you're like fully dressed because it leaves more to the imagination.
Right.
To drive home the point that you can be wearing anything or look like anything or not even look like stereotypical Barbie, and they're still coming for you.
Right. Yeah. So I just wanted to highlight that because I've heard that's not, I know that's not uncommon, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. No, it for sure. And it was interesting what you said about how jarring it was, Justin, because I felt the same way, even though like every day walking to work, like I'm hearing the same things yelled at me, but like it doesn't faze me at this point because it's normal and I'm not like, my physical space isn't being violated, so I can block it out. But then like hearing it in the movie when it's this sharp contrast from the utopia of Barbie Land was like, what do you mean they can just make those comments?
Can we talk on the topic of toxic masculinity and patriarchy? There was a lot of role reversal in this movie that I felt was, and tell me if you agree, because I'd love to get your thoughts on it. A lot of role reversal it was very interesting because I felt like this movie in some ways was trying to show the harmful effects of patriarchy to men by painting them as the ones that were being oppressed, like the Kens. But at the same time, it didn't hold back during other scenes in coddling them.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I honestly, before I saw the movie, when I heard all the rhetoric about it and how, conservatives were very upset that it was so anti-man, I honestly came into this movie expecting a lot more anti-man propaganda, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. I thought they painted the Kents in a very sympathetic light, and I think they did a great, and I say that as a positive thing because I think the movie does a great job of showing how both men and women and people of all genders are harmed by patriarchy, men obviously in different ways from women, but I think the Kens were overall sympathetic characters, even when, they acted horribly. But I thought
Mojo Dojo Casa houses.
I thought the role reversal was really fascinating to me because although the roles were the power imbalances were flipped, the Kens were never fearing for their physical safety.
True.
They never had any threat of violence against them. They, maybe they were being made fun of a little bit, but not really. They had pretty good lives. Ken's biggest problem was that Barbie didn't love him the way that he loved her. And while that's a bummer, he'll be okay. And whereas in, the real world, women are in a constant state of fear and move through the real world in like a flight or fight mode. So I thought it was interesting that when they did the role reversal, they didn't go a complete 180, whereas to have the Barbies be like dominating in an aggressive, violent, oppressive way. Obviously, they had more power than the Kens, but it wasn't in, at least I didn't perceive it as like an intentionally evil way. I don't know.
I'll be honest, that's something I didn't even realize, but you're absolutely right in terms of not doing a complete 180.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. What were your thoughts about the every night is girls' night? Because I feel like that was referencing something, in a flipped sense. But what were your thoughts on that?
I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, I love the idea of every night is girls' night, but that's just me. But I hadn't thought about that in terms of a role reversal. But I do think that makes a comment of, yeah, in Barbie Land, every night is girls' night because girls run the world, and everything is always done by their rules and their whims and desires, in the same way that in our world, every institution is, it's always guys night in every institution we have here.
That's kind of how I took it too. And also the comment that, well, why don't we have I think we do have an International Men's Day, to be quite honest with you, but
We do actually.
why don't we celebrate International Men's Day?
Really? Interesting.
Yep.
I'm not surprised, but those comments, like, why isn't there a this day? And it's like, well, every day is this day in the system that we live in.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was how
That's
I
And
that was
created. Like, let's not humans created the society we live in
Yes.
too. So
Yes.
it's less passive. I mean, oftentimes nowadays it's more of we're in a passive, but people in power are actively maintaining the way
Right.
things are.
Because
Yes.
we can say that, yeah, that the system is the way it is, but it is because it's actively maintained by people in power. It's not a passive thing.
Right.
which are often straight, white, wealthy men.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, I just want to put, because to be honest, I don't know who's going to listen to this episode. I'm not saying, and we're not saying, oh, if you're a white man that's straight, you're a bad person. Because no. And I can see how that argument would be harmful as well. It's literally just saying you benefit from an oppressive system, and if you recognize that and work to combat it to the best of your ability, you're called to do so. Not if. I'm not saying if you can do that, you're called to do so. You are called to do so.
Just pointing out privilege.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I also think too, relating to what you both have said and the way that the movie was written, I think more right-wing critics have said, as Sarah said, it's anti-man, whatever. But the way the movie was written, like you said, it wasn't, okay, now the women are oppressing the men, which is why I think, and I'm not Greta Gerwig, so I don't know what her intention was necessarily, but I like to think that it was more about promoting gender equity. Because, even at the end, when, all is restored to the way it was in Barbie Land, Barbie does say, well, I guess every night doesn't have to be girls' night. And I don't think it's like, oh, if it should be role reversal and women should rule instead, we should be living in a matriarchy instead of a patriarchy. Someone said to me recently, it's just power corrupts no matter who it is in power. And so, whether it's a patriarchy or a matriarchy, that at some point human nature, power corrupts. And so, which I thought was an interesting philosophical thought, which we can talk about, we don't have to talk about. I'm just going to leave that there. But just bringing everybody to the table and giving everybody equal opportunity, to me, is kind of what I got from it versus, oh, we should live in a matriarchy instead of a patriarchy. I don't think that was necessarily the solution that was given.
I agree to an extent, but I also think the movie focused so much on the systemic, like, deep-rooted power imbalances that,
Yeah.
I mean, this, that equal opportunity isn't enough to lift everyone to a place of equity. And so that's why I think the depiction of Barbie Land was important, not as an ideal or something that we should ever aspire to, but as a thought of, okay, what does the world look like when it's not run by men? Is it even possible to have gender equity when women and people who aren't men have been oppressed and marginalized for thousands of years under the system that we live in and that our ancestors always lived in? And so I don't know if she was proposing, or if Greta Gerwig was proposing a certain type of world we should aspire to, or rather just offering, like, this is what it could look like. And not great. It's also not ideal either to have a matriarchy, but I think before you can even have a conversation about a world with gender equity or a world without patriarchy, you have to focus on the issues at hand of the, you know, the systemic oppression that we face.
I agree to that. I don't think she was necessarily providing a solution, but more so pointing out or criticizing different things about the way things are.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people are going to see the Barbie movie and be like, this is how society should be, or have a solution to how to fix oppression and things like that. But no, yeah, I get that. Yeah, what were you going to say, Nick?
In response to Sarah's, you can't just, you know, level the playing field, and that you didn't use those exact words, but and expect it to be fair, right? And that's when the conversation of equity comes in. But it's the metaphor that I think of is like the stick that's bent. You have to bend it past equilibrium to get it to equilibrium. Yeah. Because if you go and stop at equilibrium, the stick is going to bend back the other way, just in the way that it's been that way for so long.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If it's okay with you guys, I would like to talk we talked a little bit about the masculinity and how that's portrayed in the movie. Do you want to talk now a little bit more about feminism and how that's portrayed in the movie, and just go back to a little bit of the girlhood and the womanhood that are both such large themes?
Yeah, I could literally talk about this forever. But in terms of the feminism point, I'll start with that, because I'm actually really interested to hear what the two of you think about Barbie's portrayal of feminism, because I've seen a lot of critiques online that it's very surface level feminism 101, which it is. I'm hearing this from, you know, corners of the internet that take gender studies courses and read bell hooks and all of these things, that we do need a more nuanced conversation about feminism, especially a more intersectional conversation about feminism. But this movie was not serving that purpose and never claimed to serve that purpose. I know we're going to talk about the monologue in a little bit. But I think the way that this movie just like laid it out there, like, yeah, basic intro to feminism 101 is really important for, first of all, for the audiences who may not have been exposed to that type of messaging before and are now able to have these conversations. And also even to people who are deep in this type of thought and this thinking and writing and talking about feminism, seeing how these messages can be made palatable and are palatable in the neoliberal, like, white feminist sense that does serve a very important strategic purpose in the feminist movement's goals. It's not 100% correct all the time and needs intersectionality, but I think the movie did actually do a good job, or I'm not an expert on intersectional feminism, and I don't hold a lot of the identities that that movement advocates for, but I loved what the movie did with feminism. But I would love to hear from people who aren't women about what they thought.
The Kens, if you will.
Yes.
What is the question exactly? How do we feel about how feminism was portrayed in the movie?
Yeah, or like, I don't know, like, I guess, like, did you did it resonate with you? Because I know that you both understand the basics, like are feminists and understand like how patriarchy works. So like, did it resonate with you? Did it fall flat or like, half-ass feminism? I was wondering what you thought.
I don't think well, to me, it didn't feel half-assed. I thought there were, like I said, there was a lot of intention behind each scene. It's interesting because, and this is not to pat myself on the back, this is not like, oh, good job, like for being the bare minimum, but like I see, maybe, I don't know, maybe this is just as a gay man, I'm not sure. Gay men are still, can still be responsible for and susceptible to misogyny, but just as a gay man, like, I was there for Margot Robbie. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, slay, like, this is iconic. Like, that is just how I view, like, quite literally, many of my heroes are female pop singers. So, like, that's how I was, like, living. Like, that's how I was viewing the movie. The parts that were more difficult for me to resonate with because I'm not a woman is how it feels, because I don't know how it feels. I can listen and I can have conversations like this, and I think because Greta Gerwig did a good job with this movie, or in my opinion she did a phenomenal job, I think she portrayed how she feels the female experience is, at least for her. She can only portray what she feels, and then I don't know, I'm assuming there were many conversations to make sure it's as universal as it could be, or hit as many experiences as it could be, not be universal. So I'm assuming like the actors had a part in it and the writers had a part in it. Like, I don't know much about directing or how much she was involved in the story, or if her job as a director is more like behind the camera and like the angles. I don't necessarily, like, I know nothing about cinematography.
She did write the screenplay.
Okay.
But
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming she had conversations with other women. So I think every story is unique to the creator. So she wrote her best interpretation of what her peers are feeling, but definitely what she feels. I mean, she could have gone I just can't imagine she'd say, okay, how can I like make this so not about my experience? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like she probably wrote from her viewpoint, as most writers and, playwrights and movie creators do, ? I really don't have like a solid answer. I don't think it was half-assed because I think there was a lot of thought put into it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm totally with you.
Did that make sense? Because I didn't want to, that sounded to me like, just hearing it as a listener, like, or pretending to be a listener, that I hear it as, what did you think about how feminism was portrayed? Well, I'm a great man. Like, that's what it sounded like.
I don't know if it's, yeah.
You're
but fine. I wasn't quite shocked, and maybe I'm sure there were men that weren't shocked by women being portrayed this way, because all of the female characters are very strong and independent. Like, that's something that I see a lot. So maybe that's why I wasn't shocked by it, but there could be people that were uncomfortable by it. And there's obviously an issue with that, but I think that's what one of the things the movie was taking aim at and highlighting it for people. And please tell me if I'm, overstepping and saying that too. Like, I want to make sure that I'm getting my thoughts across accurately without, speaking for women. That's just, as a man that watched the movie, that's how I felt.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Of course. Justin.
Yeah, no, I agree, Nick. And I think, Sarah, you made a good point about, this movie was not going to be a deep dive into gender studies or anything like that. It was, and even if some people took it away as like surface level, I think, again, we talked in the beginning of this episode about it trying to be approachable to as many people in the audience as possible. And I think, introducing some concepts to some people or just reintroducing it to other people was definitely important. I know I will say, similar to Nick, right? Like as a man talking, but also as a feminist speaking, I take my definition of what does it mean to be a feminist from the women in my life, right? Like I don't kind of create my own definition and say this is what it means to be a feminist, and I'm doing that. I'm checking those boxes. It changes like anything, in life, and so I take those cues and I craft that definition from the women in my life, and and what that means. So I think answering the question is definitely hard. I mean, I don't know. You spoke so eloquently about the different like bell hooks and the was it the neoliberal kind of view that
Yeah, I just
yeah
think personally didn't have a problem with it. I just have
yeah
seen a lot of internet comments of it's two white feminists,
sure
and I mean Greta Gerwig is a white woman, and so am I. So it's not really my place to disprove that or
yeah
say that's
yeah
not true. But I don't know. I thought it was, like we've said so many times, like this movie was all about accessibility and making these things as palatable as possible while also opening the doors for conversations like this that are a lot more deeper and more nuanced.
I
About
think something that our guest on a few episodes back now, Milo, continued to say in their episode is it's kind of like a yes and, right? It said what it said, but it can and it can go further.
Right.
And I think that's it's a jumping off point. It's a conversation starter. Like we're talking about it right now. It's also supposed to entertain. It is a movie.
yeah.
But I
It's
think
about dolls.
yeah,
Like
about dolls and things like that. But us scholars, I even hesitate to call us that, just like talking about this, I think that's the point too. It's supposed to start conversations.
yeah, I think that's the point.
Yeah, exactly.
To dive a little deeper into the female experience, Sarah, do you want to talk about the scene? Like the scene of the movie, the monologue?
Oh. Oh my gosh. I mean, America Ferrera, what a woman. What an actress. That blew me away. The delivery, the content, it just absolutely like summed up all of, not all because they're infinite, but so many of the common pressures and challenges that are universal experiences for almost every woman and girl growing up. And just, I mean, the delivery was just fantastic because it just kept coming, and she kept hitting you with it. Like that monologue for some people was feminism 101, which it is, but it is also such a deeply lived experience for people who identify as women and are raised as girls, that all of those things that she mentioned, whether it's about body image or motherhood or career or just interacting with other people on a daily basis, are just these things that are constantly weighing on our minds, but we often don't articulate them or put language to them, because it's just the way that we're socialized and the way that we move through the world. So for all of those aspects of womanhood to like be crashed together in like a 5 minute or so monologue was just like really striking to like have like my entire life like summed up like that, like really quick.
No, yeah, I was moved by that monologue, almost to tears. If tears were on the verge of, they were right there. And I'm curious, what did you both think about snippets of that monologue or continuations of that monologue being kind of like the cure to the brainwashing?
Yes.
When Ken comes back from the real world and he instills patriarchy in Barbie land and he's brainwashed the Barbies. What did you make of that being the cure? Lines from that monologue or lines similar to that monologue being not the cure, but the snap back to Barbies being Barbies.
Well, the line I believe in the movie, and I'm going to misquote this, but it's by giving voice to the cognitive dissonance of being a female in the patriarchy, dismantles it, robs it of its power, robs the patriarchy of its power. So that was in a very literal sense, like, to me, you know, calling something out, calling out the problem, talking about the problem, making sure it's not the elephant in the room. The problem, it can't exist in silence. Or it can thrive, not it can't exist in silence. It's going to thrive in silence. So the more vocal we are about it, the smaller the problem's going to get. So to call it out.
Complicity, kind of.
And
yes.
that is why putting language to these experiences is so important, and putting it in a big blockbuster movie like this is so important to
exactly
give words to these experiences and these microaggressions and macroaggressions that women experience, that by talking about it and by realizing, for people of all genders to understand that this is what's happening, yeah, it does like snap you out of it in this, like, in the way that Justin says, like, he takes his cues for feminism from the women in his life, like, because you're having those conversations. And that is not to like I'm not saying you're like cured of patriarchy, but like it does like snap you out of being complicit and from like and into being an advocate. And like I think that's what we need for, you know, all forms of oppression, but you know, since we're talking about gender here, like I think that's what's happening.
I agree.
And we talked about it in a previous episode too, Nick, but we did an episode on toxic masculinity, and in that episode we talked about how, unfortunately, what comes with toxic masculinity is gender-based violence. And women are oftentimes on the receiving end of the gender-based violence, but men are responsible for dismantling the toxic masculinity, not women pointing it out. And so, you know, it's important for us to be having these conversations about feminism, about, you know, the patriarchy, you know, us as in you and I, Nick, being, you know, self-identifying men, just as much as it is for, you know, maybe even more, but just as much as it is for women, for Sarah, for women to be seeing this movie and be talking about this movie.
Yeah, I think it should be mandatory viewing for everyone.
Yeah.
I'm like making my brother see it.
I was going to say, did I see a screenshot of you saying that your brothers have to see this in your family group chat or something like that?
Yes.
Did I?
Yeah. Like it's mandatory.
I love that.
I want to ask on that note, and I don't know whether Greta Gerwig created this metaphor or if it's how I read the scene. It doesn't matter. It's not a perfect metaphor. No metaphor is perfect. You can't, you know, liken things exactly in a metaphorical sense to things that are actually happening. But what were your thoughts on when the Kens were turned against each other? That's how the Barbies reclaimed their power. Because the way I read that was not we need to turn men against each other. Read that as a call out to those in power who often, for example, we look at what we're being sold in terms of body image, right? And how a lot of these, like, I don't know if you've heard the song Victoria's Secret, but it basically says Victoria's a dude. Like, he's an old guy selling you this, like, false message of what you have to be in order to be pretty. And then people are, it's turning, then you bring in the competition between women, and it kind of masks the problem, the larger problem that's going on, when they're really not their enemies. And we see this I feel like we see this a lot. This is a theme in all oppression. You kind of like blame like, for example, the argument that, oh, people who don't live in the US that are moving here are stealing our jobs. It's like, okay, well, no. But second of all, like, I feel like those in power that are now paying those workers less money to do the same job, it's deflecting the blame onto someone who's just trying to live. And I feel like that was kind of what she was doing with the turning the men against each other, like in that role reversal. And tell me if either of you disagree, but in that role reversal, it was like the person in power
Yeah. And that's I think that's also like articulated when like Sasha says like, oh well, men hate women and women hate women, because that's what like we're taught is, for everything to be a competition, and to, yeah, hate everything that, because women are lesser, that, everything feminine is negative. And so I think you see that in that scene, in that role reversal. And I think you also see it in the Mattel executives, which I thought like their presence in the movie was so interesting in terms of like corporation
Mm,
commentary, capitalism commentary, but also all the white men controlling this land of beautiful women, and
mhm.
marketing to young girls and women.
And just to sneak this into the solution of Barbie coming to the real world for them, I mean, this had many layers to it, but why don't you get in the box? Get in the
I
box.
know,
Why
I
don't you get in the
know.
box?
Oh, it was so
Oh,
good.
that scene I thought was so interesting. Just,
Yeah.
yeah, but just a small thing.
I didn't even think about that with the box, and that one's like slapping you in the face the whole time. Like it's like literally get in a box.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I
Yeah.
see. I'm looking at it and I'm like,
Stereotypical Barbie. Yeah.
right. Well, here I'm looking at it as a. This is my privilege, viewing it this way, and also I love like details, marketing, all that stuff. I'm like, oh, what a pretty box. They did such a good job on that. Like, look at the twist ties. Like they really went into detail on those. But I do just want to highlight that this was when I this is probably how I read the scene, and it's an imperfect metaphor because I'm not saying, well, the Barbies were wrong to turn the Kens against themselves or against each other to then take power. Like within the context of the movie,
Yeah.
they regain their power from an oppressive force. But at the same time, that's how I saw it. Like the person in power staying in power by turning those that are being oppressed against each other. That's kind of how I saw it a little bit. But you mentioned and please tell me if you disagree. I don't want to, again, I don't want to be like, that's how I saw it. Next topic. You brought up the executives. Did you notice, I'm assuming you both did, that Will Ferrell's character, who is the CEO of Mattel, the way he reacts to things as a man, it's very overreacting.
Yeah. He's being
But he
emotional.
gets exactly, but he gets away with it. It's there's no they never. I mean, from a director's point of view, she draws attention to it, but like the characters never draw attention to it. And in fact, the characters aren't the Mattel team isn't even necessarily viewed as like the bad guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I find really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And granted, maybe that's because Mattel made the movie. Like part of had a hand in the
From the
movie.
very
so
beginning, a
far.
Mattel production. Yeah.
Right, right. But yeah, no, that was something I noticed too. Like when he was like, "Just get in the box." Like if a woman, Taylor Swift talks about that a lot. Like a man can react, but a woman can only overreact.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And they make another reference to that in the beginning when Barbie, in a world without misogyny in Barbie Land, when one of the Barbies is like, I can hold both reason and logic, and I recognize that, or I'm sorry, both feeling and reason, or logic and
Something like
reason,
that. Yeah.
and I recognize that they enhance each other, not
Yeah.
like my feelings enhance or give me strength. They don't like so yeah, they pointed it out there too. I don't know the exact quote, so I'm not going to continue to butcher it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
As someone in the psychology field, I appreciated that.
Yeah, they did it really well.
That was good. Yeah.
I'm seeing a note that Sarah wrote that I'm curious about.
That does not even belong in this podcast. That's just my theory.
It's so but it's but that goes back to the way you can interpret movies, and also there is no one right way to interpret a film. If somebody wants to come out of that movie and interpret it a different way, that's art. That's what art's there to do at the end of the day. I mean, the director has a message and the writer has a message if it's a book or a film, anything, TV show, whatever. But I mean, interpretations are valid. I'll say that. I do not sound confident in that. They are all valid, but I mean, we're also seeing some. Let's add nuance into the conversation, and I'm just saying, like, if somebody says, "Oh, I saw this as a queer film," and you know, they're not saying like, "Oh, it was because the gays are gonna kill us," like, you know what I mean? Like, if they're seeing it in a positive light and they're like, "I saw this as a queer film," that's how you read it. Yeah. You know, and that's what you got out of it, and that's okay. That's what I'm trying to get across.
Yeah, no, just like we've touched on it, but just how the movie captures the female experience beyond, I think, everything that's horrible about being a woman, about being oppressed and being scared of men and all those things, because yes, like, that's a big message of the movie. But what I really took away from it, and why the first thing I said when the credits rolled was I love being a woman, is because of the like pure feminine joy that both within the movie and outside of the movie in this cultural moment, I think this really brought a lot of people, especially for me, because girls often, you know, when we're young, we play with dolls and we sing our favorite music and we love boy bands, and you know, we're allowed to do everything girly, wear pink, and then this is big generalizations of, you know, the progression, but I know this is a fairly common experience. You get to a certain point and you're taught to hate anything that's associated with being a girl, because you subconsciously have this understanding that being a girl sucks, because you're never going to be on that elevated pedestal with men. So many girls, you know, in their teenage years want to distance themselves from the color pink or the things they really enjoyed as a kid. And I think what this movie brought, you see this all over TikTok and the internet, what this movie like is doing for adult women, and not just girls in their 20s like me, like I'm talking about mothers and grandmothers and women of all ages, is the ability to just like revel in being a woman and being a girl, and how awesome that is, and like how cool the color pink is, and like the deep bonds of female friendship and how beautiful that is. And I think that like this movie, it shows it in the movie with the relationship between Gloria and Sasha, and then, you know, Margot Robbie's character, and all the female friendships among all of the Barbies. You see it there, but you also see it in the movie theater, in the audience, people going with their moms to see the movie, me taking the little girls I babysit for, who I see my younger self in this movie. And I just really love how there's so much. I think it's really special right now in 2023 that like we're allowed to be girls, and we love being girls right now, because I think for so long it wasn't cool, and now it's cool, and I just love it. It makes me really happy.
I think that's a great place to end this episode, honestly. Like, what a great note to end that on. It's a great time to be a girl.
And I know you guys are both not girls, so I'm really sorry about that.
Don't apologize. That's
okay.
For that. No, stop.
Really
don't.
Cool.
Don't apologize
That's okay.
for that at all.
Because not to compare, because I know they're different experiences, but you also, I mean, you identify as a lesbian, I identify as gay. That's how I have felt when I go see a movie about a gay person.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like, yeah, it comes with a lot of hardship, but like at the end of the day, I love it.
Yes.
I
exactly.
love that.
Like, I would not, like, I love this. I love being this so much. I love being a girl. I love being queer. Like, it's the best thing in the world, in my opinion.
Right.
And like it sucks a lot of the time, but like, let's also just like, I don't know. And that's also like what pride is. So.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you feel empowered.
Yes, it really, yes.
That's the point.
That is the
feel
point.
Empowered in who you are.
And that goes back to Margot Robbie's devastation when she realized that she was no longer, or that she never really was an empowering figure as Barbie. And honestly, like growing up, the idea of Barbie was not empowering to a lot of girls. But I think now it's really cool that in 2023, she's evolving and becoming empowering.
Which is, we won't give away the end of the movie, but, you know, Barbie
last
is
line.
evolving.
Yeah,
Everyone,
literally.
yeah, like word for word, almost.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on.
Oh my gosh,
I know I
thank you
asked you
for-
super late, but
This is so much fun. I had so much fun. Thank you both so much. This is
Of course,
great.
thank you for
this
joining
was such
us.
a blast. Like, what a great conversation. You'll definitely have to come back on. We'll definitely have to,
Sure.
hang out now that we'll be semi closer to each
Oh,
other.
yeah.
But this was so great. Thank you so much again.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
My name is Justin Dew.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay. I'm
with
sorry.
that,
This Ken is Justin Dew.
I was just gonna say,
All right, fine.
am
My
not-
name is Ken.
I was gonna say, I'm not just Ken. I'm Nick Gervasi.
You can reach us at our email, pointofdewpodcast@gmail.com, and on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, and TikTok at Point of Dew Podcast, and Twitter at Point of Dew. We might be getting rid of that soon, just an FYI. If
Yeah.
you enjoy our show, make sure to follow the podcast and give us a rating or review wherever you get your podcast, or share us with a friend or family member. We really appreciate it and are truly grateful for your support. As always, we hope you have a great 2 weeks. Thank you for listening, and until next time.
I think Alan likes Ken's. H.
Oh, yeah.